been a long time since the Bruins took down the Bulldogs, and all UCLA has to do is follow DeShaun Foster's three pillars, and that streak will come to an end.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase, which you should use to go support the Bruins in the Rose Bowl in their season finale for the 2024 year during DeShaun Foster's inaugural campaign. UCLA is taking on the Fresno State Bulldogs. The Bruins have not beaten them since DeShaun Foster was a player for UCLA. You know, if you watch Game of Thrones and you debating back and forth about who's the prince that was promised. Well, in my mind, it's DeShaun Foster who's here to get rid of this quarter-century curse, apparently, to take down the likes of Fresno State. I'm tired of this nonsense. It started with the Silicon Valley Classic back in 2003, some heartbreaks versus some first-year coaches for the Bruins in some regards, the weird choke for UCLA 3 years ago when the Bruins couldn't get a stop to stop Jake Haener from going down to win the game in the Rose Bowl in 21 after UCLA's brutal beatdown of LSU just weeks prior. What is it going to take for UCLA to beat Fresno State at home in the Rose Bowl, where for everything beyond senior day, there's really nothing to play for except for DeShaun Foster's ability to build for this program, to provide more enthusiasm going forward? It's going to come down to UCLA identifying, playing for DeShaun Foster's three pillars he's used as a head coach. He's reiterated it. He's talked about it many times before, during, after games. Discipline, respect, and enthusiasm. Those are our three keys to the game. Well, that sounds simple, Zach. That sounds stupid. That's nonchalant terms. Well, let's break it down for you. Discipline. We all know UCLA is one of the worst penalized teams in the Big Ten. And coming off a USC game, regardless of if it's a win or loss, since the USC game has been no longer the last game of the regular season for quite some time now, at least at home, UCLA has been struggling in these years when they play a game after USC. And when they do, they never play well. All time, they generally, whether it's playing for a Pac-12 title on the line, whether it's playing a bowl game, whether it's just playing like Syracuse back in the late 50s or 60s, something's gone wrong for UCLA after the SC game, sometimes with a lot on the line and sometimes with nothing on the line. In this case, this is for UCLA going for their fifth win, right on line with the projections around the 5.5, 4.5 win-loss over-under total. But if UCLA doesn't want to play, if they come in with a lack of discipline, like they showed against SC, like they've shown so many times before, I'm not sure we're going to see a UCLA team chirping up the sidelines, ushering USC out to their visiting locker rooms and getting 3 penalties against Fresno State. I would love that passion. I just don't think that's going to happen. But what I would like to see, less than 7 penalties. And that's not asking for a lot. That is not asking for a lot. If UCLA commits 7 penalties in this game or more, they will have lost. If they commit less than 7 penalties, they will most likely win. The over-under, I'm putting between 6 to 7. If UCLA commits 7 penalties in this game, automatic loss. If you watch this game, you're like, UCLA's committed their 7th penalty of this game, I'm going to tell you, turn it off, go do something else, put up a Christmas tree. If they commit a 7th penalty before the game is over, unless it's like excessive celebration on the last play of the game for some reason, then I'm going to tell you, turn the game off. Don't even bother if they commit that many penalties in this game, because they won't win it. If they're committing that many penalties, they won't win the game. 6 is this weird gray area where you're like, all right, is it a false start? Is it 2 pass interference penalties? Where is that coming in to this game? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. But 6 is a gray area, 7 guaranteed L. 5 or less, UCLA would win this game. That's my thought. It's not asking for a lot. But unfortunately, UCLA just has to do the simple things, and they can win this game for sure. A rare opportunity where they're looked upon as the favorites, where they're absolutely looked upon as the favorites in this game. Now let's move on to key number 2, our second one. Respect the opponent. You can't come in here thinking, all right, this is a Fresno State team, yada, yada, yada. They're 6-5. Yes, I'm not sure which Fresno State team is going to show up. They went to Michigan, they competed, but then we realized Michigan is not that good of a football team. Fresno State also lost to Hawaii at home. Okay, you're like, is this Fresno State? But they're bowl eligible, 6-5, winning record this year in Mountain West Conference play, because they only play 7 with the addition of the Washington States and the Oregon States to the schedule. So they played even less conference games than they normally do. But last week, Fresno State took down one of the best teams in the Mountain West Conference, Colorado State, who was most known for this season, running their mouths, smack-talking Colorado, and then Deion Sanders coming in and smacking them around, just beating them down out in Fort Collins. Yet, Colorado State had rebounded. They're unbeaten in Mountain West play. Don't forget Boise State's hot start, because Colorado State was unbeaten and might be playing Boise State, depending on how things shake out, in the Mountain West Conference Championship game, which could totally ruin CFP Group of 5 viability if Boise State loses that game. Beyond that, Fresno State upset this team 28-22. And at this point, last week, I think I was recording the reaction, Fresno State was up 28-7 at halftime. So it wasn't like some late comeback. They were dominating the Rams. So what do you mean by respect the opponent? Obviously, UCLA's lost 4 straight. Lots of these have been close. They've been brutal. They've almost always been one-score games in the last 4 times they've played in the last 24 years. What's it going to take for UCLA not to choke another one in the Rose Bowl against Fresno State? How do you respect your opponent? Yes, you're going to have all your eyes on Mikey Keene. He throws for a lot of yards. He has a high completion percentage. You're going to look for him to distribute the football all the way around. It's not exactly like Jake Haener 4 to 3 years ago, where he was leading his team in a program with Kalen DeBoer and the Jeff Tedfords of the world, who did step down earlier this year for Fresno State, they're under an interim head coach. Respect the opponent, because last week Fresno State got it done on the ground. Bryson Donaldson, 12 carries, 140 yards and a touchdown, with a long carry of 43, 11 yards per carry, about 12 yards per carry. So you have to respect, despite UCLA, a senior-laden defense that's got 9 starters expected to lose eligibility and enjoy their senior day. If they want to go out on top, they have to remember that Fresno State is going to do more than just throw the football. If they found something with Donaldson, and maybe it was just gashing the Rams defense, you have to respect the running game. Don't play everything for the pass, because the last couple times UCLA has been burned by the run, specifically the quarterback run against Washington a couple weeks ago. So respect the opponent, show up. If you're going to come out there, play sloppy football, you go, all right, a turnover, as I talked about the discipline, lots of penalties. Respect what might be a different avenue for Fresno State with the game plan. Obviously, they see the numbers. They know UCLA is a physical defense. They held one of the best running backs in the country to one of his worst games of his career in Caleb Johnson from Iowa. That doesn't mean Fresno State might not try something. So watch out for that. I'd like UCLA to make sure Fresno State does not get over 75 yards rushing, which is a very bold take there. But they get less than 75 yards rushing, then it's going to be all in the arms of Mikey Keene, who could still do enough to push around the UCLA defense, but that would make them one-dimensional, and I would also like UCLA's chances in that game. So if you limit the running game, which was very successful last week for Fresno State, make them a one-dimensional unit, then that's up to Akaika Malloy having well-timed blitzes, the secondary, which has been in recent weeks a little bit better at making plays on a tip ball or two. I like the chances for the UCLA defense. Now 3, enthusiasm. You've seen the conga line. You've heard about the conga line, the excitement, the enthusiasm that DeShaun Foster likes to push forward in his practices, push towards his players and what they play for under his program. Now, what does UCLA have to do? Enthusiasm. You have close to 25, 26 players who are exhausting eligibility. A lot of defensive starters who are taking on the end of a mini reign of UCLA's defensive dominance, right? Last year, one of the best defenses of all time, really good against the run. This year, just as dominant against the run, sneaky good defense without the dominant pass rush that they had the year or two prior. So you had one of the best UCLA pass rushers of all time, one of the best D-lines UCLA's had the last couple of years, came together last year, underrated and really fun, and I think we should be super appreciative of them this year. Remember, in 22, that UCLA defense did quite a bit on a Cam Rising, a healthy Cam Rising in Utah, that eventually went on to win the Pac-12 to beat them in the Rose Bowl. So this is a third year in 3 defensive coordinators for UCLA, and they've come in and they've had either great moments, improved numbers each and every year, or this year they've had really good numbers despite very minimal expectations. So the enthusiasm comes from the seniors, all right? Defensively, we want them to shut down the Bulldogs, and this is the real last chance for Akaika Malloy to come in and earn himself a raise, an extension as the UCLA defensive coordinator. Not just that interim guy that got promoted by Chip Kelly and DeShaun Foster kept the staff intact. No, a good defensive output today, a good senior standout performance by Jay Tawia, who chose to come to UCLA and stay at UCLA after getting flirted with in the portal by Texas. Came back. I like to see all these defensive secondary transfers make a play, defend a pass, get a pick. Let's see like 3 or 4 interceptions. Let's get greedy with it, force a lot of turnovers, and then that can mean a lot of easy, fun day for an Ethan Garbers, who we're seeing the end of his career. And I'm not going to really debate whether we're going to see a Justin Martin in this game. I'm not sure that's how DeShaun Foster is going to roll, barring something else. But if you remember, it wasn't necessarily Ethan Garbers taking the job away from DTR. His career ended in an injury in the bowl game, and that's when the Ethan Garbers era started. I'm not sure we're going to see Garbers being benched in this game. I would think senior day, after all he's been through, they're going to leave him out there regardless of what happens. No need to even bother throwing Justin Martin's name out there. His job is to get as good as possible in the offseason, truly understand the Eric Bieniemy offense, and then develop into a quarterback that can take the reins with a year or 2 dominant years potentially of leading the UCLA offense, hopefully deeper into their Big Ten membership as he battles incoming freshmen, the portal, everything in the future. This day, it's about Ethan Garbers, the offensive line having a good day, losing 2 starters, and potentially some guys we might not see. Is TJ Harden going to come back? Is J. Michael Sturdivant going to come back? Are we going to see Carson Schwessinger come back defensively? So there's a lot of potential Bruins who we've come to love in the last 1 to 2 years that have developed, blossomed, despite the circumstances, individually growing a lot as a player to put themselves on the table as an NFL draft prospect, undrafted free agent prospect. And we got to show them some love because this is going to be, for more Bruins than we expect, their last game in the UCLA blue and gold. So let's give them some love. The enthusiasm, show up, support, 1 to 2 turnovers forced, 1 to 2 touchdowns in the air for Garbers, 1 big play on the ground for Garbers, and I think this can lead to a UCLA win. What do I think is going to happen? Prediction time, we'll talk about that segment 3. For segment 2, let's talk about UCLA's women's basketball team that's currently on the islands. They're in Honolulu, taking on the Hawaii Rainbow Wahine and the rest of their Thanksgiving tournament weekend tournament teams. And there's also been a big upset in women's basketball. What does that mean for UCLA? We'll talk about the number 1 team in the land next. I encourage you to check out Game Time. Multiple times the last couple months, I'm like, all right, I want to go to a game, right? Dodger postseason game. Check out a game on the East Coast. I'm like, where am I going to go and find the best deals? And some of the biggest moments, biggest games I've watched this year, I've gone to Game Time. And you know what? They've come through with zone deals that have been much cheaper than any other option out there. And when you toggle in the all-in pricing, you know what you're going to pay up front. So it's not like it's a zone deal where it's like, man, it's just no, it's a zone deal. When you toggle in the all-in pricing, you know you're getting the best deal possible with some solid seats as well with Game Time picks. It filters out the fluff. You know exactly what you're getting, and you're going to save a lot on great seats for not just sports, concerts, other events as well. Game Time does it all. So all you have to do is take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the app, create an account, use the code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Use the code Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, segment 2. Let's talk about the UCLA women's basketball team because they, of the two teams, are the only ones in action so far this weekend. What's going on with the Bruins? Well, they're taking on the UT Martin Skyhawks. Skyhawks, goodness gracious. A little sleepy after eating all that food yesterday. The Bruins on the road in the Stan Sheriff Center in the Rainbow Wahine Showdown, a 3-game and 3-day event. So the Bruins are going to test themselves playing 3 games in a row. Took on a team that came in 1-4. Not exactly a trap game, but you're going to wonder how is UCLA going to perform after their biggest win, arguably in program history, in the Corey Close era, in the era in which they've never won an NCAA women's basketball championship, let alone made a Final Four. It's been 6 years since the Bruins even made an Elite Eight, and they've fallen short countless times despite many great teams and performances since then. All right. This is the same UCLA team that destroyed South Carolina by 20, who was the then number 1. UCLA had not won a single game against the number 1 team in program history, 0-20. Well, that win then turned UCLA to the top team in the country. And that was jumping over a Notre Dame team that went to USC and beat them down by 15 points, leading by as many as 21, I believe, in the fourth quarter, sending those SC fans to the exits early in the Galen Center. And they had a sellout crowd there. And that's with Olivia Miles, Hannah Hidalgo, who's being talked about as Player of the Year. We can't forget about one of our favorites, Lauren Betts, coming in there, and she was a double-double machine against UT Martin, the Skyhawks today. We'll get to her in a moment. UCLA, all right, they won by 60. Slow start, again, interesting. But one of the unique finals I've seen today on Black Friday was TCU. And remember, TCU has had quite a few players come in the portal, super important. They have had Agnes Emanopu come in from Stanford, who had limited time at Stanford, started her career as a national champion, and now she's coming off the bench as a key contributor, 6th player for TCU. All right, you got Sedona Prince, who's been in college basketball since the 2018-19 season, started her career at Texas, never played there, went to Oregon, played with, some of the best Ducks teams, saw them fall from grace, but has now played at TCU the last couple of seasons. She is a 20-20 player, right? 20 points, 20 rebounds. She did that against Notre Dame. That's a dominant post player. UCLA has played many times. She's currently holding down the fort in Fort Worth. And we cannot forget about one of the biggest transfers in this most recent portal season, Haley Van Lith from UCLA enemy, even though she didn't do a lot against the Bruins in the LSU-UCLA Sweet 16. She left Kim Mulkey's squad and went to TCU. I believe just had her first career Final Four. She started her career out in Louisville in a Final Four, went to LSU, and then now is at TCU. And Van Lith had 21 points against Notre Dame. Why am I talking about this? The number 3 team in the country lost by 8 on a neutral floor. Now, TCU completely crushed Notre Dame on the fourth quarter. Notre Dame went in this fourth quarter down 11, I think. I remember checking the score. I was like, all right, it's back and forth. Notre Dame should hold on. I turned and I saw the score. The 17th ranked team beat the 3rd ranked team by like 10 points, outscoring them by 20 in the fourth quarter. That's a team who just went to USC and dominated them. I know USC is down a starter in Kennedy Smith. I'm not sure how long she's out for, but she's a starter for the Trojans. Notre Dame still went there, took care of business, and I think Notre Dame's a little shorthanded as well. They dominated. That means a TCU team in the top 15 is about to vault into the top 10. It means the 2 to 3 unquestioned teams right now you can look at are UCLA and UConn. The Bruins do not play UConn this year in the regular season like they did last year, where they beat UConn, a very injury-prone UConn program in recent years, but beat them on a neutral floor as one of their significant wins. UCLA does not have, I think, as many big-time non-conference games like last year, in addition to a tough schedule. I think the Bruins have a much easier schedule this year. Some of these games against teams that were preseason ranked, they've already taken a loss or two, like Louisville. Creighton, I think, has already fallen out of the top 25 or taken a loss. I'm wondering what the Big Ten challenges will be beyond USC. I know Ohio State was one last year, but that was a big non-conference win for UCLA. Who are these teams? Indiana, I think, is lost. The challenges for the Bruins, they've all taken early season losses. Now, you have to go on the road. You have to show up every game. You're number one team in the country. They're going to come out and find a way to put the Bruins back into their place. And how is that done? UCLA, in this game against UT Martin, had like 7 first-quarter turnovers, struggling early in the first quarter, and then only was leading 20-12 after the opening quarter. Well, that was the most points that the Skyhawks of UT Martin got in a quarter the entire game. UCLA went from an 8-point first-quarter lead to winning this game by 60. Outscored the Skyhawks by 16 in the second quarter, 20-point lead, which ironically, if you would have thought UCLA versus a 1-4 team on a neutral court or South Carolina, the number one team at the time, who would they have a bigger halftime lead against between those two teams? A 1-4 team who UCLA had a big spread against, I didn't see the number, or South Carolina, the recent reigning undefeated champions? UCLA had a bigger halftime lead against the Gamecocks than they did against UT Martin. Travel, Thanksgiving, yes, it all plays into it. A lazy day. I think they had a day off. Maybe a little complacency. But UCLA ended up dominating. Equally as dominant in the third, utterly dominant in the fourth, and the Bruins left no doubt. The one problem I do not like is the turnover margin, right? UCLA has struggled with turnovers this year. They forced 28 turnovers, but the amount of turnovers UCLA had early, it was concerning. I believe 7 turnovers in the first 10 minutes of a game. And that's how they struggled against Louisville. That's what they avoided against South Carolina. But when UCLA, I think, does eventually lose a game this year, it's going to come in a game when they have a lot of turnovers. And no, it wasn't the freshman point guard, Elena Onorsalo, today. It was not Kiki Rice, who is still rounding herself back into form after a delayed start to the season. She's not playing 38 minutes, nor does she need to. A lot of it's been a little Dugalich. She had 3. Lauren Betts sometimes can turn the ball over with a poor footwork move there, or just having the ball brought too low and it gets stripped. But in the end, after a lot of turnovers early, the Bruins cleaned it up over the next 3 quarters. And the real story of this game, yes, we're talking of a game where you had Lauren Betts go 18-12. London Jones went 3 of 7 from downtown, so she had 11 points in her return to the starting lineup. She was on the bench to start the South Carolina game, which put Gardner back on the bench. I'm not sure if I like that, but she's such a good sharpshooter in any role. She added 11. So UCLA's now got 2 3-point sharpshooters. This game was defined by Gabriela Jaquez. 17 minutes, 17 points, 8 for 8 from the floor, couple assists, 4 rebounds, 1 turnover, showcasing her growth from her freshman year now into her third year. Isn't that nuts, right? It was just like it seemed yesterday where Jaime Jaquez Jr. was winning Pac-12 Player of the Year. The UCLA Bruins were winning the conference, had national championship aspirations. Baby Jaquez was a freshman on the team. They're getting interviewed by local news. Now here she is on a team with not just lofty Final Four goals. If they don't win a national championship, if they don't reach the game, if they don't even get to the Final Four as a minimum, this season is starting to look like one that might not have a successful tone to it. You fall short in the Elite Eight, I can't sit here and be as sappy as I've been in recent years. You got to get further and got to develop. And the depth to this team is starting to show, right? UCLA still missing a true freshman coming back for injury, still missing a key transfer, also coming back from injury. Not entirely sure how quickly either one of those is, right? Zinnia Saka, and then you've got Charlize Ledger-Walker. Those are 2 of those players. However, when you got 2 3-point shooters in Jones and Gardner who combined to go 5 of 10, it's going to be tough to stop. When Lauren Betts on an off night can go 18-12 in 20 minutes, tough. Oh, wait, by the way, Kendall Dudley, a lot of minutes. A lot of minutes for the youngster, 21 minutes, 8 points. Also got to see a little Avery Kane. She scored 8 points early. Janiah Barker, 19 minutes. UCLA went 10 deep. They can play 8 to 9 to 10 deep. This is arguably some of the deepest teams you will see on both the men's and the women's side combined. Both Corey Close and Mick Cronez, they kind of combine things here, have some of the deepest rosters you will see them have in their tenure. They're not going to be stuck playing seven guys, although in a dire situation, you might see that. It's going to be a different hero every night. So again, the story Sunday was London Jones. The story today was Gabby Jaquez. Who's the story tomorrow? I don't know, but UCLA should hopefully win by 40 and know what it's going to be like when it comes to tournament time. You play 2 or 3 games in a condensed scenario, 2 in 3 days, 3 in 3 days, like conference tournament time goes. I guess I haven't looked exactly at the bracket breakdown for the Big Ten Conference because UCLA will expect to have like a triple, quadruple bye, whatever it's going to look like. They're still going to have to play back-to-back days, 2 and 3 days. This is how you learn how to quickly turn over a scout and beat a team that you're supposed to beat. Like UCLA is going to be favored in every game until they play in the Galen Center. That's just, I think, how it will be, unless they might even be a favorite in the Galen Center. I'm not even sure when they go play USC later this upcoming season. Bruins dominate. Jaquez showing the development. UCLA showing they have multiple shooters, deeper than last year's team, who was a number 2 team preseason last year. And for a large portion of the year, this team is deeper and better. And that's without the second best scorer in their program's history who just graduated. Isn't that nuts? Isn't that absolutely nuts? And they won by 60 on a bad night. The times are good for Corey Close right now. It won't be tough, but they've got to dominate. And they're hopefully only going to get better with the talent coming back from injury. Right now, they're national championship good, but I think they can be close to a lock in the Final Four if they can get some of these players back or fully develop soon. Next, it's time for prediction time on Locked On UCLA. What do I think is going to happen between the Bruins and the Bulldogs? We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, you bet $5, you can get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Let's take a look at this UCLA-Fresno State matchup, right? Right now, the Bruins sitting there 8.5-point favorites. 8.5-point favorites on FanDuel. UCLA against the spread this year is 7-4. The only time the Bruins were favorites, ironically, against Hawaii. And they had a big spread against the Rainbow Warriors, a team that went and beat Fresno State this year. Do I expect UCLA to win? I'll give you a short. Yes. However, I don't know if they'll cover their spread. So I'm going to say take Fresno State with them plus 8.5. And if you want to go with an in-game bet, you're looking late. I talked about the penalties. If UCLA's committed quite a few penalties, that might even let you hedge your bet in-game or make you turn it off. But check out FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Fresno State to cover, but that doesn't mean I'm going to pick them to win the game. We'll talk about that next. Also, check out FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make everyone more and take the fun with FanDuel.com. All right, so what do I think it's going to happen? All right, as I just said on the FanDuel read, if you missed it, all right, I said Fresno State's going to cover because the one time UCLA was a favorite, UCLA did not cover a big spread against Hawaii. And that was on the road, the season opener. A lot of things went wrong. UCLA, all time, when they play games after the USC game, do not ever outperform the competition. They generally underperform and underwhelm. That doesn't matter who's the coach, whether it's a Chip Kelly, whether it's a Jim Mora, anybody going back to the early days of college football. UCLA plays any type of game after they play USC, which for a large portion is usually been over the course of history the last game UCLA plays in the regular season, but in modern football, that is just not how it's been. UCLA struggles. I think I saw a tweet from Ben Bolch or something he wrote in the LA Times that said UCLA's 3-7 in games played after the USC game since 2012. And that doesn't even include a season before where they played in the Pac-12 championship game. That doesn't include some ugly games before where they had weird games in late December against teams after the USC game. Varying circumstances or not, anytime UCLA plays a game after USC, it is the curse. Win, lose, or draw. Usually the Bruins have been a no-show, right? You get your emotions all worked up. You're like, I despise everything that has to do with those colors of the USC team, anything that has to do with Cardinal and gold, anything that has to do with the victory bell changing colors, anything. You win, you lose, your emotions are spiked. You're going to be super crazy. Whether you're doing a card game, whether you're doing anything, get your bitter rival, whether it's your brother, whether it's your best friend, anything, your neighbor in a house divided, anything, you got to come down. The ebbs and flows, right? That's why you can't get too high into a game, right? You can't get too overly energetic in a football, any sporting event. And yet here UCLA is the week after the USC game, which I wonder, can DeShaun Foster be the coach, depending on how long his tenure is at UCLA, to find a way to motivate the team, right? That's the discipline, respect, enthusiasm motto. Be enthusiastic, you get to play a game because this is the last one you play in the regular season. You're not guaranteed a game. UCLA is not going to have high enough APR scores, and I'm not sure there's enough bowl. I'm pretty sure there's not enough bowl spots, even for under 6-win teams, for UCLA to be considered as a 5-win team. Second, respect the opponent. I think even though in this day and age, as teams and players transfer, it's up to the players, the coaches, to understand the history and the emotions of a matchup. I know DeShaun Foster, having played in the last time UCLA won, is probably stuck in a lot of bewilderment as to how UCLA hasn't beaten this program. Now, Fresno State, they're not the bottom of the barrel. That's not what they are. All right. Last time UCLA beat Fresno State, they had David Carr on their team, who went one of the top picks in the draft. His brother went there, and they were very good as well. And they've had teams that have been pretty good as well, battling top-tier Oregon teams, winning Mountain West championships. Their coach from a couple years ago, I remember when I got to call one of their games, he's now at Alabama. So they're not the bottom of the barrel. All right. They are absolutely not. They're playing with a head coach that's an interim coach. There's been a lot with the Skipper family and the connection between the fathers, the familial connections that have coached DeShaun Foster at the collegiate level, at the NFL level, and now it's a battle for, all right, respectability in their head coaching jobs, one battling for a permanent job for the Fresno State interim coach, and now for DeShaun Foster, who, if you get to that 5th win, there's a lot of people poking fun that UCLA hasn't won and beaten Fresno State in a long time. Well, it took to this year for Oregon to finally beat Boise State for the first time ever, and it happens to be one of the best Boise State teams ever, and Oregon barely won at the end of the game at home, and they're the number 1 team in the country, to beat Boise State, a team who has been their foil forever. Now UCLA, who is, since the turn of the century, since the turn of the millennium, has been struggling to beat this program for whoever knows why. I don't know. It's been from Bob Toledo all the way now. There's been something a little off when UCLA plays Fresno, whether it's been a fumble, a 9-minute drive, UCLA failing to play defense over 30 seconds, maybe a terrible team like it was the first year Chip Kelly was there and UCLA was no match. That's not the same team that DeShaun Foster has inherited, but they should still win just the same. So as much as I talked about FanDuel Fresno State covering, because UCLA as a favorite, that's a tough, if you're talking betting, an 8.5-point favorite, that means you're taking UCLA to be a 2-score favorite. And UCLA is a 2-score favorite with the emotions of last week. I'm not sure. Whether it's a backdoor cover by Fresno State, I'm not entirely sure that's what's going to happen. All right. I just don't see UCLA winning this game by 2 scores. Not that they're good enough. They're certainly good enough to win this game by 10, 15, 20 points. They could dominate. I want to come on here and say UCLA 30-10, 50-10, whatever. No. In actuality, how it played out last week, it's not a short week. Because remember, a lot of these games last decade plus, UCLA would play on the Friday after the USC game with 1 day less rest. You have Thanksgiving, the emotions of a rivalry game the week before. All that plays into generally a little lack of energy, a little lack of emotional, resolve that you have inside stored up for this game. But I think it's up to the players and the coaches to know the history. Hey, we need to beat this team. You want to be a respectable team, set up DeShaun Foster for success. If he's going to host a recruit or 2, he's already got a transfer recruit committed. He's got a 26 recruit committed, a 27 recruit committed. He's still got to build this program. You go 5-7 and be like, hey, you go on different sites. You could see UCLA beating an over-under win total. And UCLA's over-under win total this year, I think, was set at one point at 5.5. That didn't include for Indiana to be a CFP contender. Didn't include for Minnesota to be like a 6-7 win team. that was pretty decent, all right? It didn't include for some of those things for UCLA to have arguably the toughest schedule in the country. It did not. So now knowing those facts, a big win, I think 5-7 would be a pretty solid step in the right direction. Yes, it would be a decrease in wins the last couple of years, but with how everything played out, with Chip Kelly leaving and UCLA having to quickly turn and pivot to head coach, regardless of if you're in or out, and DeShaun Foster being the right man, whether you hate the athletic director or not, UCLA, I think, really needs this game a lot more than Fresno State does. They would just love to rub it in, but they have too many wins in the bank of insulting all the UCLA fans with some of those wins. UCLA desperately needs this one to get to that 5th win, end the season on a high note, send the seniors out riding high, and I think they will. This has, in my mind, a 24-17 feel to it for UCLA. They could be winning 24-3 for all that matters. I just think UCLA is going to play this into a one-score game. Whether they start from behind, because UCLA fumbled a punt and led to a Fresno State touchdown early in the 2000 game. Last time UCLA, when they were playing from behind, had a big lead and let Fresno State back into it back in 2000 when DeShaun Foster had over 159 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdowns in like 29 carries or something ridiculous, where he has better yards, more scrimmage yards than it seems like TJ Harden has all year. Not true, but it kind of feels like that if you look at the old DeShaun Foster highlights against Fresno State. It could be a ghost town. It might be at the Rose Bowl. Things might go against you. Okay. But I think UCLA wins this game 24-17. I think UCLA can force Mikey Keene into 2 turnovers. A pick, maybe a strip sack fumble that gets the team rejuvenated, fist pumping off into a victory to end the season. Maybe it's a tipped interception. I think UCLA can force 2 turnovers defensively. Garbers, I think he's game for a 280-day, 2 touchdowns, maybe a pick, and a big 30 to 40-yard run. I like to see TJ Harden do something similar. I think they might stack the box, and it will go into Garber's legs that will make the difference into UCLA winning like it has during their 3-game winning streak a few weeks ago. That's what I think. That's my prediction. UCLA win. I'm saying screw with the bet against UCLA rule, even though I'm literally saying bet against them. But if it's win or lose, money line, you're taking the Bruins. You're taking the Bruins in this game 24-17. And that's going to wrap it up. We're going to have post-game immediate reaction, as always, on this channel, and we'll tell you your thoughts for the 2024 season. It's the last one. Let's get ready for it. And 8 clap time, fellas, ladies and gentlemen, everybody together. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.